if I actually want that vision of like having a family, being there for them, being a good dad, like the type of dad that my dad was for me, then like things have to change. I have to have a lot more like financial freedom, and I not just like having financial freedom, but having more time freedom, having more location freedom, so that I don't have to be bound by this constraints of bedside nursing or like working 12-hour shifts all the time.
Welcome to the show. Today we're joined by Daniel Tran. He's known on Instagram for his Wealthcare Pros account. He left nursing at the age of 26. Sounds like he started doing that waking up before dawn, cold plunging and all that, and just had a huge mind shift. No, I don't know if that's what it was, but he left nursing at 26. He's been doing coaching, like finance and that kind of stuff, and somehow got away from the bedside. So we want to talk to him about that today. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Excited to be on here.
Yeah, so kind of talking beforehand, sounds like you're based out of Texas, been there most of your life.
Mhm.
Did some nursing for a bit. So kind of talk to us about that. What was your introduction to nursing?
I feel like a lot of nurses, they have this story where they're in nursing school and they have this story about like, oh, my mom was a nurse, my aunt was a nurse, and I always knew I wanted to help other people as my calling. Dude, I'll be completely honest. I only did it because the girl I was dating at the time was a nursing major. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was like, hey, like, why not? I don't know what else I want to do with my life at like 18, 19 years old. So seemed like a stable path, went with it. Happened to work out, I got into nursing school, got my first nursing job in a adult inpatient psych unit, and had a good time, learned a lot of character development there, I'm sure. And I'm sure, as you can imagine, getting cursed out and like verbally and physically abused at times. But it was a fun time. It was definitely like not boring. But of course, with psych nursing, the rate of burnout is pretty high. So had to get away from nursing in one in one way or another. So um, use COVID as like a great time to like kind of self reflect and like see what I want, like really want to do with my career, like going forward. Like build a coaching, personal finance coaching business. It started to like slowly move away from nursing, and kind of like this is kind of led me to where I am today, which is like not nursing anymore, but helping nurses take control of their personal finances. Pay off debt, increase their savings, start investing so they don't have to do this for the rest of their life either.
That's my buddy of mine. He was a nurse too that I worked with, but he followed his I guess girlfriend to the military. So and ended up going
Mhm.
to Iraq and like like fought in the Iraq war and all that stuff. So at least for you, it was just nursing school. But
It can like lead you along like a certain path that you never thought that that you would go.
yeah, are you still with that nurse girlfriend?
No, 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 no. It's long gone. Super grateful that I met her because my life would not be the same
Yeah.
had I not.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's interesting too, because it's like, I think like regardless of how you feel about nursing, I think
Yeah.
like a lot of people feel the same way that like even if they're not in it anymore, and it sounds like you had a pretty quick stint in nursing, but like it got you to where you are now, and now you're like helping other nurses. So it's like definitely worked out. But going into psych, I don't know if we've talked to anybody that did psych nursing. So what was that like as a new grad coming in straight into a psych unit? Because I did ER, so I'm familiar with psych patients, but it was like
Like,
we'd usually like just drug them as soon as they came in the door and they'd be like knocked out.
it's funny, no matter what field of nursing that you work in, you can't run away from psych patients. Like they're everywhere, right? And it's funny. Whenever I first graduated from nursing school, and people would ask me, like, "Hey, like, where are you working? Like med surge or like ICU?" I'm like, "No, I'm working in psych." Like, really? Like, it takes a special person. Like everyone would say that, right? Takes a special person. I guess they're not wrong, but I always knew that I wanted to be a psych nurse. Quite honestly, like after my second semester in nursing school, we had like our psych clinical, we had like med surge and stuff like that. And I always knew I wanted to be a psych nurse. I could never really see myself working on like a medical floor. Just like being able to sit down with like every single patient that you have and like talk to them about how their day is going, um, what's going right, what's going wrong. I found it like very therapeutic, and I feel like I could just having the patients like sit down, like having the time to sit down and like talk to them was like pretty meaningful for me. So I knew from that point on, like during my second semester in nursing school, that's the type of nurse that I wanted to be. And I always knew that wasn't gonna be comfortable. Like, I'd be put in situations where, people are, like, hallucinating or they're, like, bipolar and having, like, mood swings and stuff like that, and, it's honestly, like, what I really wanted, was to be put in those uncomfortable situations. Because the way that I thought about it was, if I can handle situations like that, then whenever it comes, like, the real world, I can handle, like, any normal situation that, like, comes my way. So, it was really fun. Of course, like, it wasn't always easy, um but I'm really glad that I did it, 'cause, like, whenever I hop online, I get some kind of hate comment, it's just water off my back, and I've dealt with, like, so much worse. So, it was definitely a fun time.
This episode is sponsored by All Day Investments. If you would like to get your start in real estate investing, but don't want to deal with toilets or tenants, we have several new opportunities that might interest you. Head over to alldayinvestments.co/invest or follow the link in our show notes to book a call with our team. Yeah, it's funny how you say that you're dealing with psych patients no matter what area of the hospital you're in. So I worked straight in I went straight to ICU after I graduated,
Mm.
and there's one patient that stands out in my mind. He was a little bit crazy. Like, we had him in, I think it was 4-point restraints. He broke out of that, so then we put like 2 sets of 4-point restraints on each extremity. Broke out of that. He was like on Ativan drips. I think he was on ketamine drips. He was on so many drips, and he was just like, the amount of strength he had. I don't know where it came from, but
Different,
it's crazy.
yeah,
I
it's
so is
superhuman.
that so that's what I imagine these psych units looking like. Like, is that the type of, like, a typical patient you were dealing with, or is that a little bit on the extreme?
Dude, it's so funny you asked that, because whenever I was working on the psych floor, I was charged nurse a lot of the times, and one of our responsibilities was to go to, like, other units, within the hospital and, like, deal with their psych patients as well, right? Because we have, like, more training in that regard.
Okay.
The most extreme patients I've ever seen are not on my floor, but they're on medical floor. I kid
Oh,
you not,
man.
I kid you not. So, for whatever reason, like, those were always the most, like, aggressive patients on medical floors, like, always. Yeah, it's not a surprise to me at all whenever you like, what you described is actually, like, pretty common, like, on medical floors. Whenever I would go to other floors and I would see that, I'm like, "Holy crap, this is so much worse than what I have to deal with on my floor." So, I'm not surprised.
Is that because you guys are more comfortable, like, giving, like, heavy doses of whatever medications? Just like a straight IM shot of whatever Haldol, Geodon, I'm not sure what you use routinely.
Honestly, no, because we try, like, every measure before it ever gets to that point, and I feel like
Okay.
a lot of nurses that work on medical floors are a lot more quicker to, like, administer that type of stuff. I just think it's, like, the combination of, like, maybe having, like, a psychiatric disorder and, like, a medical one, like, at the same time. It just, like, really aggravates the patient. Maybe that's what it is, but I rarely ever dealt with, like, aggressive patients on psych floors. This is actually pretty rare.
Yeah, I think it's that, like, meth on bipolar combination that you get where it's like, they're, like, got that superhuman strength and they're, like, just, like, losing it.
Yeah. It's like the Florida man that everybody talks about.
I think those people are, like, in survival instinct all the time. So it's like then that you feel like it's like a life or death situation, which is what creates that superhuman strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is
Oh, it's
thing.
wild.
Yeah.
It's wild. So you said you were a charge nurse, and that was pretty early on, and that's another thing we've kinda heard as, like, nursing is changing, and I don't know if this is just, like, changes before COVID or because of COVID, but how quickly did you move into a charge nurse role, and was that out of necessity, or was that something you wanted to do and you felt prepared for?
No, I didn't. I definitely did not feel prepared for it. I became a charge nurse, like, before yeah, it was before I even, like, graduated my nurse residency, which is funny to say. They kinda just threw me into mix. I mean, it was, like, night shift, so it was a little bit less, like, going on. I always told my nurse manager, I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I really don't wanna be a charge nurse. I'm pretty happy with, like, how I'm progressing right now." And she's like, "Oh, no, Daniel, like, you'll be great, like, you have a personality for it. You'll be fine. I'll give you all the resources that you need." And, like, as a very new impressionable nurse, you kinda just go with it. So then, I went with it, and I actually turned out to love it. And, like, after I started doing charge nurse more and more and more, I didn't feel, like, exactly ready, but I was like, "You know what? I'll just, like, kinda throw myself into the mix, and we'll see how it goes," and I loved it. Like, I mean, I know a lot of nurses don't really feel this way, but I love being charge nurse to the point where, like, I would ask people, like, "Hey, like, can I be, like, charged tomorrow and, like, you be bedside?" And like, "Oh, hell yeah, like, let's do it." So, I mean, just my personality, I love, like, to oversee things, and it's a big, like, character development thing for me as well, just, like, fighting with like the staffing supervisor about like having enough nurses in our shift and stuff like that. So I mean, that was a fun time as well.
It takes a special personality, I think, for that. That's great. That you're ready to just go to bat for all the nurses that are on your floor. That's,
Yeah, that and like fighting with the ED as well, like taking admissions and stuff like that. It was
Hey,
oh
hey, 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 hey.
yeah, those darn emergency room nurses.
yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, I feel like a common theme is just that ER nurses are not. I don't want to say hated by the rest of the hospital, but kind of. But whatever. I understand why.
No, I love it. I love it. I love dealing with like ED nurses and ICU nurses because I feel like the type of person now that you have to take on to be a really good ED or like ICU nurse is like you just can't like take any crap and you don't have time to like BS and stuff like that. So they're just so straightforward, and I love to see that personnel like in action. Like some people like they don't like it, but I just find it like so fascinating. I just love it.
Yeah. So before we hit record, you said that COVID had a little bit of a role in you exiting the bedside, I guess.
Mhm.
But so I guess I have two questions. So I guess so on a psych unit, you're not seeing the same response to COVID as you probably are on these medical surgical. So like people still have psychiatric disorders that have to be treated. So what did that look like once COVID came through? And then kind of talk about the transition out and what started that process.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So yeah, I mean, we weren't like flooded with COVID patients or like anything like that. But what did happen is, a lot of the medical floors were like, pretty short staffed, and that caused a lot of us to like have to float. And I don't know about you, but I freaking hate being floated. I hate it. So you would just like show up, and then they would float you like last minute. You're like, man, this is not what I signed up for, And yeah, it was a tough time for a lot of people I know, but for me, like COVID was probably like one of the best times in my life. Just give my personality. I'm very like introverted, and I think it was good for people like me because I mean, I didn't want to go out and like talk to people anyway. So um, I was just kind of forced to like sit down and like be very like reflective on like how I wanted to like spend the rest of my career, right? And I'm sure like a lot of nurses can relate, but after nursing school and after, like, your nurse residency, you just kinda feel stagnant, you don't really know what else you should be doing, like, after that, and, like, learning kinda stops or it kinda stagnates, and then a lot of people have this notion of, like, "Oh, I gotta go back to school," I have to become, like, an NP or become, like, a CRNA, and for some people, that's a really good option, but for me, I feel like I would just think about those things 'cause I didn't know what else to do. I feel like it's not good to just go out and do things because like, you feel like you should or, like, you feel this external pressure. So once I really thought about it, I was like, like, if the whole point is just to make more money than, like, being, like, an RN, I don't really think becoming, like, an NP or, like, becoming a CRNA is, like, the best course of action. Like, there's so many different ways to make money. Maybe I should, like, think of, like, other ways, right? And I don't wanna just make more money, but, like, I wanna have, like, a career that I feel like is meaningful as well, that progresses me in the way that I want to develop professionally. And for me, is I was always drawn to, like, entrepreneurship and, character development and, like, sales and, like, marketing and, like, stuff like that. So, I was like, "Well, let's try this business thing. If it doesn't work out, I'll just go back to school, become an NP." So, invest into a few, like, coaching programs, like, taught me how to, like, start this coaching business. Just happened to work out and kind of, like, never looked back from there.
So, did you like intend on completely leaving nursing when you started this, coaching path, or did you like why didn't you keep it part time and just do it here and there?
So, whenever I first started my coaching business, the original plan was to, just do it on the side, maybe make a few like an extra like $1,000, $2,000 per month. And then get to the point where like maybe if I'm like 35 and I'm doing like pretty well financially, maybe think about going part-time. So that was the original plan, right? And that plan did not work out at all. That's not how things went at all. So um yeah, with the coaching business, I wasn't really profitable for a while. And then what was it like month six, month 5 or 6, like things started to take off. I'm like, okay, like there might actually be something here. So then it got to the point where my coaching business started to like the income from that started to exceed on the income from nursing like pretty substantially. So I decided to go part time with that. But then after like 2 months, I was like, yeah, it doesn't really make sense for me to like do both. Like one is like hamstringing the other, so I decided to go like full time with that. So after like a month or two of being like part time or like PRN, I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna leave entirely.
you left the bedside, it sounds like at 26, I think you said, and then, like, what
Mhm.
after it was only, like, a couple years that you were nursing, right? So was it like do you just feel like that was your personality? You were just looking for more than just, bedside nursing and like you mentioned, not wanting to just further your education just for the sake of furthering your education? Or were there, like, factors within the hospital and the workplace that were kinda driving you to something else?
It's funny, all these things that I do in my life, I feel like are not against they're not in alignment with my personality at all. Like, being like an entrepreneur, leaving nursing, it just if you ask my parents, they'd be like, I can't believe he actually did that," because I grew up, like, very shy and not wanting to put myself out there, like, here I am just recording, like, messages, like, just, like, recording videos and, um, putting out videos of myself, like, voluntarily, and, like, I'm not very risk tolerant either, so, like, leaving nursing, starting my own thing, like, betting on myself is not something I would typically do, but I also know, like, my weaknesses, and I know things that I want in life, and, for me to, like, actually, like, have these goals that I want for myself, I had to fight against a lot of these natural urges of, like, being shy or, like, being, like, very, like, not being, like, risk tolerant and stuff like that.
So it is interesting that you would choose a career path like coaching and social media. Was there any, like, burnout in your job that, like, led you to this, or was just kinda the natural progression and the next challenge for you?
Yeah, burnout is a big thing. I know I mentioned that psych nursing was fun. I love the challenges that presented to me, but, whenever you walk into a job, whenever you walk into a shift and you've had the same patient for, like, the past week and, like, they're gonna cuss you out, like, it doesn't feel good, especially if you care about your patients. Like, sometimes I would find myself, like, trying to block out whatever my patients would say, and I'll take it personal, but you can't just pick and choose whenever you have compassion for your patients, and if you wanna ignore the negative things that you say, then you also kinda have to ignore, like, all the positive as well. So, I found it pretty hard to balance that whenever I was a nurse, and, it was a good challenge, but after a while, I just, like, felt well, honestly, I felt pretty burnt out, and I've always been someone that was, like, really big on, like, self-care and making sure I took care of my mental health, my physical health outside of work. But even then, like, no matter, like, how many times I meditated, no matter, like, how many times I journaled and, like, worked out, like, got good sleep, um, you can't really you can't really run away from burnout in that way, right? So, that was a huge driver. And something that I think about a lot in the future is that, even though I'm not anywhere close to it right now, I think about my future family a lot. I really want to be married. I really want to have kids in the future. And just the lifestyle that I was living as a nurse just wasn't the greatest for that. So especially like working on a psych floor, working like night shift. I always thought about like, hey, like what if I wanted to pick up my kids from school, at like 3 p.m. What if I wanted to take them to like soccer practice, like basketball games on the weekends? Like, does this lifestyle is it conducive for a lifestyle like that? And the answer was a resounding no. So that was a big decision for me to be like, okay, I have to take more autonomy over my career. If I actually want that vision of like having a family, being there for them, being a good dad, like the type of dad that my dad was for me, then like things have to change. I have to have a lot more like financial freedom, and I not just like having financial freedom, but having more time freedom, having more location freedom, so that I don't have to be bound by this constraints of bedside nursing or like working 12-hour shifts all the time.
You clearly have thought about all of this stuff a lot. So where did that like start? Where did that stem from? Because like me,
Mm.
I would always like pick up the extra shift. I would always do whatever it took to make more money. And honestly, like money was the only metric that I knew how to measure success.
Yeah.
um, Before I was introduced into this concept of time freedom, location freedom, all these other things. The only thing that people think of is money. So is finances, is that something that always interests you? Were you always exposed to it? Was it talked about in your house growing up? Like how did this start?
Yeah, I guess in my household, money was pretty talked about was talked about, like, pretty openly, but was we were never we grew up, like, pretty comfortable with money. We didn't, like, struggle or anything like that. We didn't also grow up, like, super rich or anything like that either, but, pretty healthy relationship with it, and, yeah, there wasn't, like, many problems with it, so, as a result, I didn't grow up, like, super materialistic, and, like, having nice cars, like, having a nice house was never, like, the goal for me. But the thing is, like, whenever you start to grow older, you start to see the constraints that life has for you if you don't have your money problem solved. So I never really thought about money in that way until all these different things in life, like these bills and like wanting to move out and like stuff like that. And whenever I first started working as a nurse, I was making like 25, 26 an hour. It wasn't a ton, but even then, I was like super grateful because it was so much more money than I ever made in my life. So I wasn't exactly complaining at that point in time, and always told myself, I'm pretty sure that if I was a good steward with my money, if I didn't waste it, if I knew how to invest, if I knew how to save it, I could probably take that money, like that 25, 26 an hour, and go pretty far with it, and be able to retire probably a few years early. So that was my mindset. So I read a lot of personal finance books, like learn how to be super efficient with it. That's where it all started, was reading a couple personal finance books, and what turned to a little curiosity, a little intrigue, turned into like obsession, and saving a little bit extra turned into like trying to learn how to invest, and investing it turned into investing to myself, into my knowledge, like starting a business, and it just kind of like spiraled from there. Like some people ask for help, like some of my friends like asked for help in the beginning. I was like, okay, like maybe I'm actually like kind of good at this. So then it turned into a business. So um it was all about just chasing that little curiosity at the beginning. Whenever I had some extra money and I didn't know what to do with it. That's all where it started from.
So from the time that you had the idea of doing this coaching or, entrepreneurship, can you give us like a timeline of when you started to when you were completely out of nursing and then what your day looks like now?
I believe it all started with, like that, like towards the end of more like middle or like beginning of like 2020, like during COVID, right? Whenever I started to think about certain ideas. And of course at that time, still working full time as a nurse. So I was like making my business, like making like posts on Instagram. And that was all like whenever I was like during my days off from nursing, right? So whenever I was working full time as a nurse, and I found out I wanted to be like someone that like posted content and like was helping other nurses with their personal finances, I was like really obsessed with the idea. And like every single minute that I wasn't at the bedside, quite honestly, whenever I was at work, I was working on the business. Um, like, don't tell my nurse manager. I mean, she can't do anything anymore. But
Too late.
it
Yeah.
was it was fun time. Like, anytime I was in the patient's room, like, administering meds, I was, like, on Canva, like, making these little Instagram posts and, like, these little graphics, and I was you just couldn't pull me away from it, and anytime, the day shift charge nurse was like, "Hey, Daniel, you wanna pick up, tonight?" I was like, "Hell no, I don't wanna pick up tonight. I gotta go on Canva, I gotta make some Instagram posts," like, so it was like making sure that I didn't sacrifice the long term with like the short term, right? Because like whenever you pick up extra shifts, of course, like, you get more money, you get paid like double what you like normally get paid. And that was like somewhat attractive. But for me, like the vision was always like building something bigger than just like a few hundred extra dollars for like, an extra shift, because I knew that if this dream was gonna work out, that the time that I'm putting into it right now is like so much more valuable than just like a few hundred extra dollars. Because I'm building something bigger for myself so that I can actually leave nursing and not just retire like a few years early, but actually leave nursing like more like immediately. So it was just about like having the belief in like my dream, my vision, and like having that full commitment that it would work out. And that gave me that full belief that like I didn't have to pick up extra shifts. Because I mean it would have been nice. I could have used that money to like even invest as well. But I just truly believe that my hourly rate working on myself was worth like so much more than even like 100 or like $200 per hour, like picking up extra shifts.
So as you were, like, exploring this idea of becoming a coach yourself, you mentioned that you went out and hired coaches. So what kinda coaches did you hire, and, like, how did they kinda help you work through that thing of not wanting to be, or just, like, being an introvert and, like, putting yourself out there and doing these things that your parents are kinda shocked to be seeing now?
Whenever you want to go back and become like an NP, right, you have to go back to school and like get training for that. And I think if you want to become like an entrepreneur or like start any kind of business, then there's a price to pay for that as well. And of course, like one's like more formal education, like one's like accredited, and the other one like is not. But instead of like going back to school, like I truly believe that I didn't forego like going back to school. I just chose like a different route for the education. And it's a bit trickier to navigate, of course, with online space. Like there's scammers and there's people that might not have your best interest. They're trying to make money off of you. I mean, that's part of investing, right? Is like money that you invest into yourself, whether it's like the stock market or whether it's like into a coach. You have to learn like how to do that, right? You can't just like blindly put your money into like any type of real estate or like any type of stock. You have to like do your due diligence. You have to have like kind of use your intuition after some time to see if it feels good, if it's smart investment, if it's going to give you that the ROI, and like that's been a big part of the process for me as well. Is like learning how to pick out like who's a good mentor, if it's what I'm looking for, if it fits my learning style, if it fits my lifestyle and stuff like that. So yeah, over the years, it's been like primarily like business coaching, coaches that have taught me, like how to market myself, like how to sell myself, how to be a better leader, right? Because for me, my business is not just me. Like I have a team of people behind me as well. So it's been pretty important for me to learn how to lead other people and not just like boss people around, but like understand like how to inspire them, um, how to run like operations, how to create like good content as well. So it's been a fun ride. It really is, and yeah, it's really required me to invest into myself, 100%. I mean, if I had to put a figure on it, over the past like 4 years of this whole journey, I probably invested like around $75,000, if not more, into like courses and programs like mentors. So it hasn't been cheap, but I'm very proud of that number. Like for some people it might like sound insane, but like the value that I've gotten from it is well more than that amount. So I'm not shy about investing to myself at all.
That thing of like bossing versus leading, I think is interesting, especially as you talk about charge nurses and like the nursing world in the hospital. Um, how I guess like what have you learned in terms of that as like in terms of like being a better leader as opposed to just like being somebody that just bosses people around?
Yeah, it really did start with charge nursing. It really did. And I think that's why I liked it so much. Um, being someone that's like a bit more like on the timid side, like naturally, being a charge nurse like really forced me to step up because like in these moments where the ED is like bossing you around, or like the staffing supervisors like trying to leave you like short staffed, you can either take it or you can like stick up for your people, and if you don't stick up for your people, like, they'll definitely let you know about it. So it forced me to grow up like really fast. I've seen what a bad charge nurse looks like. I've seen like what a good charge nurse looks like, and like whenever I saw those instances, I kind of chose like the type of nurse and type of leader that I wanted to be. So it forces you to grow, especially like within the business. Like for a long time, it was just myself. But like once you have people underneath you, um, you can't just like think so selfishly. You have to think for other people as well. So it's been like a huge like character development thing for me, um, and also like learning how to like lead effectively, right? Because as a good charge nurse, you can just like get mad at people for not doing their jobs, or you can like inspire them, like lead them, be like, hey, I know you don't exactly like want to do this task right now, but like we have to do what's best for like the unit, and it's bigger than just you and me. Yeah, there's other people. Like there's a reason why we're here, and also like helping people understand that, or like just like positively like reinforcing them as well. I know people like tend to respond, more strongly to like, pain than pleasure. But I guess if you want to like create like sustainable change and like good behaviors, you can't be like it can't be pain all the time. You have to do things where like you kind of have to build them up over time. So like sometimes whenever I'll want to like instill like a certain like, I guess not like behavior, but like positively like reinforce like something like within a worker, I'll be like, hey, it seems like you're trying really hard at this, or it seems like you're like really resilient. And like whenever you put that label on them, if you like just try to like punish them all the time, right? It's not really gonna work. They'll just do whatever they can to avoid that punishment. Whereas like if you label them as like a hard worker, they'll actually like want to step into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of going back to your like the amount of money you put into coaching and stuff, like going back to get your degree in NP or anything else, like it's going to be at least that much, maybe more. You're but the difference is like you're taking a chance on yourself. Like NP, you're guaranteed like this much money, but there's not really a whole lot of up or down from that number.
Hmm.
Um, but business entrepreneurship, like it's endless. Like there's no top number that you can achieve.
Yep.
So I love that concept.
The scary part is like the other, like there's no limited like cap on it, but at the same time like you really have to ask yourself, do you want like all the responsibility that comes with it, right? And sometimes like dude, with entrepreneurship, of course I could make so much more money than I would as an NP, but
Mhm.
like next month's income is not guaranteed at all. If I decide not to work at all for like the next 30 days, that I won't make any money. So um, people always say they want to be their own boss, but they rarely do people ever think about all the responsibilities that come with it. So
Mhm.
Yeah, anyone that wants to start their own thing, they really have to ask themselves, like, do they want to take on that responsibility as well? And for me, it's a pretty resounding yes. But it's definitely not for everyone.
Yeah.
It's glamorized by so many like influencers and gurus that it's like easy. All you do is you just go buy this. Well, so we do real estate. So I see a lot of the real estate gurus that make it seem so easy. And because we buy real estate, we know that it's definitely not. Like there's a lot of challenges. It's extremely rewarding when you do it right and you know have some success, but it's not easy by any means.
No, no, no. It's funny because you get to entrepreneurship because you want more time freedom, right? But essentially, you're just trading like your 9 to 5 for like a 24/7.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that. And like that picture of the iceberg where it's like the little tips out and you're like, that's like the success part that everybody sees and everything else you've done is like below that nobody sees. Like it's so true. And it's like, yeah, it's you're trading like with the NP thing or CRNA, you're trading like you mentioned, the guaranteed versus like the potential. But yeah, you gotta show up every day. And that's definitely been hard. And like, paid time off is like you forget how amazing paid time off is to like be on vacation and be getting paid for it. Whereas like now it's like if we go somewhere, like we'll come back and it's like if you take like a week off, like you come back and you got like 3 weeks worth of work now to like just to catch up or whatever. So it's definitely tough. But what have you kind of found to be the most rewarding about this whole path that you've chosen?
Once you take responsibility like for your income and like starting your own business, you start to realize that like the weight of your problems is like kind of like a lot heavier, right? And you can't just like offload it to like management or anything like that. And as a result, there's a lot more struggle, there's a lot more pain. But at the same time, I that's what I find beauty in is like be able to sit in those like uncomfortable moments and like all that struggle and like find a way to solve it, right? Because like once you solve it, it's like the best feeling in the world. So it's like almost that contrast between like struggle and like success is what I find like the most beauty in, like what I find the most meaning in. And I think I kind of came to this realization whenever I was a nurse as well. Like I know a lot of nurses, they feel like what they want the most is just to have like an easy job, right? Like there's like especially with this like these talks of like having a soft like being like a soft nurse or like having like a softer like nursing job. I definitely understand the appeal of it because like to be in this state where we're just like on like in fight or flight all the time, like survival mode, is definitely not good for you. But I think as a result, a lot of people feel like they gotta have like the super easy job. But I would actually fight back and say that that's not really what we want. What most of us want is just like to have this job where we feel like, somewhat challenged on a day-to-day basis that would like we develop professionally. But also like not to like feel burnt out all the time and like have a job that appreciates us, that pays us well. But I don't really think people want like a super easy job because it is very boring, right? It really is like pretty boring if you're not challenged in like any type of way. Um, and that's what I find meaningful, like within being like an entrepreneur as well, is like I don't want it to be good all the time because if it's like good all the time, then it's not gonna feel good. Like, you kinda need to have that contrast, right? Like, there can't be light without dark. So, in times where I struggle as an entrepreneur and, like, figured out, like, how to solve it, what kind of, like was, like, some kind of, like, new solution or, like, some kind of revelation that I'm having, like, that's really what I love the most, like, solving these problems.
Yeah, so that reminds me of so I don't know if you're familiar with Colin O'Brady, but I talked about him in a recent podcast episode. But his whole thing is like without your ones, you're never gonna have a 10. It's like you can go throughout your life and just have five, 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 and it's extremely boring.
Mhm.
But if you ever want to know the feeling of a 10, you have to suffer through the ones first. So to your point, like there's a lot of people that say they want the easy job, but do you really though? Because as a human, we all like the sense of accomplishment. We all like to be challenged.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny. I think as human beings, low key, like we love being stressed out. Like just not like too stressed out. If it's like a 5 or 6 out of 10, I think that's where like we're the most happiest. And if like there's no stress at all, we'll kind of make our own stress. We'll kind of like create our own drama or like create our own problems so we can kind of like deal with it.
So I think we're all pretty familiar with what highs and lows look like in the hospital. I mean, it's like, being understaffed and that kind of, I don't, I guess the highs would be like pizza parties, getting like a overtime shift, like, but even that's kind of a low. So that's like a five still. But as far as like your entrepreneurial journey, what do highs and lows look like for you now?
I feel like I can have like a high and a low like every single day. Like sometimes you might like laugh and like cry and like all on the same day. So I would say like emotional highs are whenever I get like a message from a client. I was like, hey Daniel, I was stuck in credit card debt for like 10 years, and like ever since I met you, you've like helped me like integrate like a healthy relationship with money, like pay down this debt. And I just feel like so much more like peace of mind. Like now I'm on track to be able to like quit like this second nursing job, which is like spend more time with my kids, like my family. And like never would have done this without you. It's like it's I'm not a very emotional person to begin with, but, like, to see stuff like that, like, how could you not, like, get emotional, and it just, like, serves as validation that, like, I'm doing work that's, like, extremely, like, meaningful for me, and I know a lot of nurses feel like they don't wanna leave the profession because, they just love to help people out, like, so much, but, like, in this world, there's so many different ways to help people out, so, um, those are definitely like, emotional highs, and, like, in terms of lows, like, sometimes I just don't
Right.
feel, like, very motivated, to, like, continue the grind, like, because like, some days I have to work, like, I'm, like, staring at the screen for, like, 12, 13 hours, like, on Zoom all day, and, sometimes, like, things don't go my way, like, like, maybe I just, like, hop on a call with, like, a prospect and, like a prospective client, and, like, they just, like, tell me, like, all this stuff that, like, I don't wanna hear or, I just feel like I can't really, like, help them out or, like, stuff like that, and if maybe it's, I have like 3 or 4 of those conversations, like, in the same day. It can be very discouraging. And, like, those are, like, very, like, temporary lows, though, so it definitely, like, fluctuates throughout the day, and, like, some days can be, like, really good, some days can be, like, really bad, but, I think what helps me out is just, like, zooming out, and, like, being appreciative, like, the good moments, and, like, there's a reason why I chose all of this. But, yeah, like, to answer your question, I don't know, I mean, it could be, like, very different on day to day. And I would say that, um it's actually very similar, like being a nurse. Sometimes you have like patients that are like super appreciative of you, and then you walk into the next patient's room, they like cuss you out. So you can't dwell on it like for too long. Just kind of zoom out and be like, okay, like this profession, like, I have the opportunity to like help people out. Like there's a lot of things that are outside my control, but like ultimately this is what I chose, and at some point in time, like this is exactly what I asked for.
I know I've heard of like, coaches still getting coaching. Is that something you're still investing in for yourself to kind of help you through these highs and lows?
Yeah, 100%. I like to think that I'm, like, pretty good at, like, self-regulating, but the truth of the matter is I think all of us, could benefit from having, like, someone in our corner that's rooting for us and is able to tell us, whenever we're, like, overreacting to something or, like, whenever we're preoccupying ourselves with some kind of, like, rumination, and, yeah, at any point in time, I'm always having like some kind of a coach, like some kind of like mentor at any point in time. Like there's never a point in time where I'm just like it's just me, where I'm just like stagnant or like not learning something. So yeah, my coach right now that I'm working with, he's helped me out a ton, not just like with business, but like personally, because you know, for me it's hard to make that distinction between like real life and like work because like work is such a big part of my life, and he's helped me out a ton whenever it comes to like staying motivated and like feeling stuck and stuff like that. So that's been a big help, just like having mentors and like people on your side that not just care about your business but care about you like personally as well.
So let's talk about your business a little bit. So we've alluded to it this whole episode
Mhm.
so far. But if someone needs some help and they don't really know what help they need, do you offer like a broad spectrum of coaching, or are you very specific on finances? Tell us about what you offer and how people can, I guess, benefit from what you're doing.
It is pretty specific, right? So it's not just like life coaching or anything like that. It's more so pertaining to personal finances, right? So definitely not a good fit for everyone. But if you feel like you're someone that wants to be in the driver's seat of your finances, like you want to learn how to become financially literate, have a healthy relation with money, like understand how to get rid of debt, how to start saving more, like how to start investing to the stock market, like saving for retirement. That's definitely what I offer, right? So um, just like any like, 'cause some people, like, are a bit confused. They're like, "Yeah, like, do you help people, like, leave nursing, like, side hustles?" And, like, no, that's not really me. I don't really do that. I don't really do business coaching either. It's more mostly people that, wanna take control of their personal finances.
And are you working specifically with nursing clients?
I would say, like, 95% of my clients, are within nursing. I do have, like, some clients that are, like, RTs and, um, like, CNAs, but it's like 5% of people that like don't work within healthcare at all. It's just like my niche. I serve nurses just because like that's my background. Like that's kind of the language that I speak, and like our lifestyles like are pretty different in that way. So a lot of us want people that are like us, so we could like speak the same language. You
Yeah.
know, because
Mhm.
the topic of personal finances and investing can be like very overwhelming and very intimidating for a lot of people. So I think talking to people that are like that look like you, that speak like you, like come from a similar background, it's like very comforting. It like reduces a lot of the friction, like the barrier to entry.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to give back to this community because like you mentioned, it is like, you know, it people helping other people, so it's like to be able to help those people and nurture them is great.
And we talk about it all the time, but in nursing school and like every single class that I ever took in college, there was no financial education. There was no
Mhm.
like connection with money or any type of business classes at all. I don't know if they're taught that in business school. I would imagine so, but we didn't get any sort of financial education in our 4 years.
Yeah, and I feel like that's why like there's such a big need for it is because it's something we never talk about. And like I know a lot of people run to nursing because they don't want to take, college algebra or or like some of these like hard courses. So like the most we ever have to do in nursing school is like the medication math, right?
Yeah.
And like money is just not something that we feel like very confident in. Because we a lot of us feel like we have to be good with numbers to be good with money. That's just not really the case at all. Like if you can do like 3rd grade math and you can be good at like investing. So it doesn't really require much of it. But
Ooh.
yeah, I mean, I also think it has to do with like the way that you're like raised as well, right? Like if money wasn't like an open topic in your household, it's probably going to be something that you don't really think about a lot, or it's probably going to be a topic that you're like pretty uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
So, and if you're 3rd grade math level, if you're not quite there, like, will you coach? Like, if I sign up for you, will you get me to 3rd grade math level so I can understand?
Oh man, I will say this: I've worked with over 330 clients at this point, and intelligence has never been a limiting factor. I'll just say that. If you can pass athletics, you have more than enough knowledge and probably more than enough intelligence to like be good with investing, to be good with your finances.
I guess nursing's unique too in the sense of like these other 9 to 5 jobs. There's not a lot of opportunity for like just picking up an extra shift, but when you work 3 days a week, you can easily pick up like 2, 3 extra shifts a week and just like make more money to support whatever kind of lifestyle you want. But then that can become unhealthy at certain points.
And then it becomes the normal, and then you're stuck in it, and it's just a cycle that it's hard to get out of that.
And then you got to go to the WealthCare pros and get fixed.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
And I've seen it so much. Like having seen the inside of all these nurses, like finances, like there's such a big spectrum, right? Like I think the nurse that I've worked with that probably makes like the most income is like this nurse that lived in San Francisco. She made like 250K, right? Which is pretty insane. But I guess,
Mm,
in the context of like NorCal nurses and like San Fran nurses, that's not too far fetched.
yeah.
And of course, like you have nurses that make like that have been in the field for a while, and they make like $29 an hour. So just like seeing a big spectrum, and also seeing that a lot of these nurses that make really good money are also some of the nurses that struggle the most with it. Like very interesting to see as well, because it's not just like you get to the point where you make a lot of money, but you have to like play the part with your lifestyle as well. Like you feel like you need to like live like a 6-figure nurse, and that's where people start to get in
Mm.
trouble. Is whenever they make 150K, like 200K, um, they've been doing that for like years, but they don't have anything to show for it. That's like it's a result of like relationship with money and like spending habits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming most people that sign up with you are having pain in their financial area of their life. So you probably have a lot of difficult conversations, but how often do you like you're having a conversation with somebody and then you're like instantly you're like, okay, for one, you got to sell your house. It's way more house than you need, or you got to get rid of this car. Like how often do you actually like tell them straight up like you need to do this because you can't, it's just not healthy to do what you're doing.
Those are definitely tough conversations, right? Because everybody wants the financial abundance. Everyone wants to start, or they want to stop stressing out about money. But like I mean, that's the upside of it. No one really thinks about the sacrifices that like have to be made, things they'll have to give up, like the bad habits they'll have to give up as well. So those are definitely difficult conversations. So if they actually want to be in a better situation, they have to understand that they have to give up all these things that make them feel like very uncomfortable, right? Whether it's like selling their car or, like selling thank God I haven't had to tell anyone that they had to like sell their house.
Yeah.
So I guess on my end, I have to be prepared to have the conversation with if that situation ever comes up. But yeah, because as a coach, I'm pretty limited in what I can do. Ultimately, is up to
Mhm.
them. And if I feel like they're like actually committed and they really want to be in a better place financially, then I have to be willing to have these like tough conversations with them and like call them out where they're like trying to like skimp out or like where they're trying to make like trying to like half-ass the commitment. So as of lately, I've had to have like some of those conversations, and of course, like, it doesn't feel good in the moment, but it's very rewarding whenever you call them out on it, and like they come back next week, they're like, like that was exactly what I needed, like a kick in the butt, because otherwise I wouldn't have like done what I did, and I would keep on making excuses for myself. So in that way, it's very rewarding once people come back and they realize that I wasn't being a dick like just to be a dick, but I actually have their best interests at heart.
All right, so we're gonna move on to the final five. It's the final segment of our show. I keep calling it a show. Like it doesn't feel like a show, but whatever makes me feel better, right?
A
Our show.
conversation.
No, I'm just kidding.
It was the final four, and
uh,
then we kept asking a bonus question. So we're like, you know what? We'll just kind of call it the final five. And actually, this is right now March Madness right now, so this is perfect timing.
so we're actually gonna ask you the Sweet 16 question. No, just kidding. All right, so number one is what's the top financial resource that you found? Where do you go to educate yourself?
I would say, for me, like back to basics. So like going back to where it all started for me, which was this book called "I Will Teach You to Be Rich" by 𝗵𝗫𝗍𝗫. I think anyone that's plugged into the finance community like knows that book. It's like so simple, like so easy to read, and I reference it like all the time.
Now, do you have to have a third grade reading level to be able to understand that book? Because can you help me get there too?
It's so simple. I mean, that was the book that actually motivated a lot of my not just like financial literacy, but my like philosophy around like personal finances and like keeping it like very simple. So he's all about like this like 80-20 rule, which is like just do the 20% of the work that gives you 80% of the results. Like don't focus on all like the minuscule stuff, right? So he keeps it very simple. He doesn't use like all this financial jargon. And that's the way that I like to teach my clients as well. So keeping it very simple, like just tuning out the noise. Because like to be honest, to be good with money, it's not always easy, but it's actually very simple. And like once you cut out like all the BS, all the distractions, um, is actually not that difficult at all.
The 16 subscriptions you have now nowadays, it's just crazy now. And then they keep hustling you, and like Netflix is throwing ads on, so now I got to go find someone else that doesn't have ads. It's like, or you got
Mhm.
to up the subscription. That's how they get you.
Or you gotta get somebody else's password who has the upgraded subscription.
So the second question is, what advice would you give your younger self or like yourself as a new grad?
Yeah, I think it's to not be so afraid of like failing, right? And for the longest time, that's what held me back from like posting on Instagram, like starting my business was being so afraid of like looking stupid in front of my friends. Like what if I put out this post and it doesn't look good? Like what if this person like calls me out for um just like trying, and like failing in front of everyone. Like I was so deathly afraid of that. And like it happened, I've definitely heard whispers of like, like Daniel's trying to be an influencer, like who does he think he is, and stuff like that. And like that was my biggest fear. But then since it actually happened, like who really cares? Like if that's the worst thing that ever happens in my life and I die and that's like the worst thing that happens to me, like does it really matter? Like
Yeah.
someone saw me trying and like not succeeding. So
Mhm.
the people that are meant, like for me, the people that are seeing my message, like they'll definitely come to me. But yeah, man, that's not really something that I'm worried about anymore. And I wish I had caught on to that like a lot earlier.
Well, and the contrast of that is like that message you mentioned earlier where the person's like, "Hey, you like really changed my life." So it's like, yeah, like risking the negative comments for like that kind of like reward and everything is, yeah, totally worth it in the long run.
Yeah, puts everything into
Yeah.
context. Cause like once you see that message, like everything else goes out the window.
Yeah.
I started posting on social media, I wanna say August of last year, and prior to that, I was very hesitant to do anything for all the reasons that you're describing right now,
Mhm.
and I challenged myself to post one thing every single day, and by the end of that, well, for a month. By the end of that month, I was just posting left and right, like, I didn't even care anymore, so that's potentially the best thing that could have happened, and
It's a muscle.
yeah. All right, our third question is, what excites you about the next 12 months?
I think the thing within the business that excites me the most, just because it's pretty new, is like building a team of people that I really want to work with, right? And that's been something it's had its like ups and downs. I've questioned myself as a leader sometimes. Like the moments where my like employee comes to me and then she's just like, Daniel, I'd never told you this before, but actually like I love my job. Like it's just like hearing the reasoning behind it is not just like smoke. It feels really good, right? And it makes me feel like I want to build like a bigger team so we could like scale even more, help out even more people, and affect like even bigger change. And I'm looking to bring on like another employee here in the next couple of weeks, and like just the prospect of it makes me like super excited. Plan to probably bring on even more people for the year ends, and all these like obviously it scares me a little bit, but also like very much so like because it's like very exciting for me. So I would say that's it, probably the project or like the task that I'm like most excited for.
Fourth one is going to be if you were to tell people to do one thing, like an action item, what would you tell them to do in terms of like finance or education?
The people are not going to love to hear this one, but it's just like taking inventory of like how you've been, spending your money. Like one of the biggest needle movers whenever I'm with my clients is having them go back like the past 3 months, like of their spending of their expenses and taking inventory of what that looks like. Because like you would not if this is not something that you do like frequently, like you would not believe how much money is like leaking out of your system from like things that you don't even like realize. Whether it's spending hundreds of dollars going out to eat like every single week, or you're paying for the subscription that you've been paying for like years and you didn't even know about it, you know and stuff like that. So a lot of times whenever my clients go through this exercise, they'll find like an extra like $500, an extra like $1,000, and they will just make this new budget for them where they have like an extra $1,500 they didn't have before. And like these are the same people like 2 weeks before that'll tell me like, yeah, I'm actually pretty good with my spending habits. Like I don't think there's a lot of room for improvement there.
Yeah.
So instead of just focusing on making more money or like making that like next best investment, like this is a very like easy way or like low hanging fruit, just to find more money in your budget.
That was like a big step for my wife and I, like that I think kind of started this whole investing journey that we're on, that we've been on for like I guess 4 or 5 years now.
Mhm.
It was just that. It was just sitting down and like looking at our expenses, our assets, our liabilities, and it was just like eye opening. It was like kind of scary. But then like just seeing it, it's like okay, like at least we've addressed it. Like now, because I think a lot of people are too scared to even look at it. Like
Yeah.
the people that like just know they're not doing well, it's like almost like just ignore it and it'll just go away.
Yeah. Well said. And like even more important than the actual dollar amount that you save is this mental shift that I see people make, whereas like they start to actually like come face to face with their finances, they make changes, and now they feel a sense of control. Like
Yeah.
once you're able to take back this money that you were losing, you take that money, you put it towards like debt, like you finally feel like control of your finances again. And like that's what gets the ball rolling for like investing as well. Like I saved all this money and like I see a difference with it. Now I actually feel the confidence to like start investing, like taking control of my personal finances and like affecting how I want to live my life in the future.
And then I'm sure as part of your coaching, like you'll make them redo it every so often, because I know that's I've done this in the past, and then you kind of fall back into your old habits occasionally, and so yeah, I'm gonna be doing that tonight. No, just kidding.
I'll message you tomorrow to make sure you actually do it.
Yeah, but first I need to learn third grade math. I need to learn how to read at a third grade level.
Fair
I'm
enough,
just kidding. All
fair enough.
right, so our fifth and final question is, what's the biggest financial mistake that you've ever made, and what did you learn from it?
This might come as a surprise, and it's still something that I'm working on today, but, it's actually, like, being too frugal, right? And, this is something that not a lot of people see as a big problem because, being too frugal is really good for you in like some ways because it makes sure that you never get into kind of like consumer debt or like never rack up credit card debt. So, but also, people I think people tend to understand that being like really cheap or being really frugal prevents you from like having these experiences in life and like takes away from the value of enjoying life to like its fullest extent. So like people will like recognize that and they'll acknowledge it on a very surface level, but, if you question them on it, like 6 months from now, they won't really see it as, like, a real problem, because 'cause they're like, "Oh, yeah, like, it's better than being credit card debt, so I'm not really gonna address it." But if you actually sit down and you think about it, and you think about, like, all the things that you're missing out on, and, like, the fact that, like, life isn't always promised, like, tomorrow, like, you could always die, like, 6 months from now, um, you're like, "Okay, like, it actually holds me back in a very real way," and once I sit down and thought about all the ways that it was holding me back, I was like, yeah, I'm just not. It's not really something that I'll tolerate, because the reason why I used to be like really cheap and really frugal is because it's just the way that I grew up. My parents were like that as well. Um, but it prevented me from like taking vacations, right? I always felt like, oh, I'll just go on vacation whenever I retire, which is very much so like the mindset that my parents have. But you start to see how that plays out in real life. Like for example, like my mom, um, like she has a lot of like chronic like health problems, so she actually can't go on vacation anymore. Like she can't really go across the world like she always thought that she would. And that's because like she always thought she would have like more time. She thought she would have more money in the future, and like now she has that regret, right? And I would just hate. It's very heartbreaking for me to see that in real life, and for that to happen to someone that I like truly love. And I don't want that for myself. So I just don't want to be like frugal with my time, like extra frugal with my time, or like my money to the point where it's like gonna hold me back in that way. So learning to like fight against that, like for myself, I think has been like a big like character thing for me as well. Is just like seeing the areas of my life that I can like improve upon and just like optimizing for like over time. So yeah, I just really urge people where they have that tendency to like be like overly cheap or like overly frugal, just like seeing how that's actually holding them back, right? Because I'm sure in some ways like that line of thinking is like useful for you, but it also holds you back as well.
Yeah, I definitely. There was an older guy that grew up, or he lived across the street from me where I grew up, and like I think he was like a realtor. He owned multiple properties, and he just like would still shop at the 99-cent store, drove like the same old car, and there were like a lot of like good principles in there where you could say like, okay, this is good, but then it's like, he lived to be like 90 something and he died, and it's like had all these properties. Like I never knew him to like go on vacations or anything like that, but
Mhm.
it was a different mindset too, like his generation. But yeah, I think you definitely have to find the balance between like saving and being like frivolous, but
Mhm.
you got to enjoy life too.
100%. Yeah, life is too short.
Yeah.
If you spend your time thinking about like, oh, like I should have went to this grocery store instead. Like it takes up so much of your mental like resources, and like you're just like worried all the time.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've learned throughout the years, or maybe I even do it to like it's like a fault nowadays, like outsourcing. Like I hardly ever step foot in a grocery store. Like I just love Instacart. I just love like outsourcing, and I like for me, I will like happily like pay for that convenience.
Yeah, it is a different thing. Like when you start looking at like the value of your time, it really changes the way you kind of value other things. So,
Easy, yeah.
but yeah, so where can people find you?
I'm not like on every platform or anything like that, but I am on TikTok. I am on Instagram at Wealth Care Pros. Hopefully one day on YouTube, maybe even like a podcast. But I'm happy to just hop on y'all's podcast whenever y'all have me. But yeah, just those two platforms.
Well, thanks for joining us today, all the way from Texas. It's been great, and yeah, we look forward to seeing where you go in the next 12 months and beyond.
I appreciate it. Yeah, this has been really fun. So appreciate you guys having me.